It's now 9:25 and we're going to begin the concurrent session. I wanted to remind folks to put their questions in the Q&A in Zoom, and whatever questions don't get answered, you can put them in the Q&A in Whova for each session. And with further ado, I would like to invite Gloria Tom from the National Wildlife Federation and their colleagues, Katie Smith-Easter from Grasslands Institute and Amelia Marchand from Confederate Tribes of Colville Reservation to present about the Intertribal Native Plant and Seed Working Group. So you all can share your screen when you're ready and unmute and go ahead when you're ready.
Yat e bene she e Gloria Tom yenishye torachitni nishle tachitni bashish chin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our session this morning. Our topic this morning is on the Intertribal Work Group on Native Seeds and Native Plants. And what we're all about is basically building partnerships and opportunities in native seeds and native plants. I am Gloria Tom, as I mentioned. I'm a senior strategic and special policy advisor to the National Wildlife Federation. And my email is on the screen there. A little bit about the National Wildlife Federation before we move into our two speakers. The National Wildlife Federation was formed in the 1930s. It's one of the oldest conservation groups in the country. And over the past 10 years, the National Wildlife Federation has made tremendous progress in bringing tribes to the table when engaging in conservation discussions, conservation initiatives. The National Wildlife Federation has Indigenous board members that serve on the National Wildlife Federation's board of directors. They have a tribal program that was established several years ago. And we have Native folks, Indigenous folks that actually work on staff, including myself. And I did forget to mention, I am from the Dene Nation here in Arizona, and that's where I'm speaking to you from. For centuries, the indigenous communities have stewarded the natural resources of North America through their culture, their knowledge, and their practice. And the National Wildlife Federation recognizes that achieving conservation and climate goals of the 21st century requires a better understanding and recognition of this stewardship. And NWF works very hard to reaffirm tribal rights for resource conservation. And we also work to provide sufficient resources and capacity for policy advancements and on-the-ground conservation efforts. Along with our tribal partners, we work to address historical injustices through the advancement of policy that leads to increased resources and capacity for tribes to address wildlife and habitat conservation priorities while sustaining cultural values. In the strategic plan for NWF, we have 3 pillars, and one of which is wildlife recovery and habitat restoration. And this is where our native plants and native seeds goals can be found. And basically, in the strategic plan, we urgently confront the biodiversity crisis and 6th mass extinction that threatens more than 1/3 of all of our species of wildlife and native plants. And that's our charge. At our meeting, the annual meeting in February of 2025 in Tucson, we formed our Intertribal Working Group on Native Seeds and Native Plants. And basically our Our intertribal work group consists of tribes, non-governmental organizations, consultants, and other indigenous organizations. We share knowledge, experience in native seeds and native plants and land restoration. And we meet virtually on a monthly basis each month. We've established ourselves, we've established subcommittees. We focus on some of the priorities that are facing tribal entities in native seeds work. Advocacy and finance is a subcommittee, land restoration, greenhouse operations, traditional, cultural, medicinal uses of plants, and plant relatives and climate impacts. And we are also in the very early planning stages of planning for a Southwest Tribal Native Seeds gathering. We prefer to call it a gathering rather than a conference. And the next part of our presentation this morning, again, our goal is to highlight the tribal work in native plants and native seeds. And I had asked two very prestigious women, native women, to talk to you about some of their projects that they're working on. We have Katie Smith Easter, who's a tribal liaison with the Southeastern Grasslands Institute. And then we have Amelia Marchand, who is the executive director of the Light Foundation. And we'll start out with Katie. Katie, you want to go ahead and take it away?
If I
Yep.
could interrupt for just one moment, could you put it in presenter mode for folks can see it better?
Yes, that's what I was gonna ask you to do,
Wonder-
Gloria. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Can everybody hear me just fine?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Siyo ni God, Sigigi, Dogwadon, Gigi, Onigaduwagi, Rocky Ford Janela. Hello, everyone. My name is Katie. I'm Onigadua. I'm Cherokee. I come from the Cherokee community of Rocky Ford in northeastern Oklahoma, where I'm based out of. And as Gloria said, I work for Southeastern Glasslands Institute as a coordinator for our Indigenous Land Stewardship Program. And I primarily work with our native seed team under the direction of Kristen Hopkins and Gus Rasick and Ashton Crow and some other really amazing seed techs who really make all this work possible. Next slide, Gloria. Can you advance to the next slide?
Yeah, I am trying to do that,
Oh, okay.
Katie.
No, no worries. Sorry.
For some reason, it's not working for me.
That's happened to me before too. Sometimes it could be funny. Like sometimes you have to click it or
Mm,
maybe use the arrow.
Let me try. Okay, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, great. And the mission of SGI is a simple one. We want to save the forgotten grasslands of the Southeast. So over 90% of our Southeastern grasslands are gone, and 25 years will be too late. So we're really moving with and organizing with a sense of urgency. Next slide. And our focal region is the biogeographic Southeast, and it incorporates all of 24 of these states, with the green areas representing more open ecosystems, not necessarily open prairies. And also keep in mind that our definition of grasslands is actually a really broad one, which includes savannas, prairies, barrens, glades, river scours, bolds, meadows, bogs, fens, marshes, as well as our coastal grasslands and sandbar ecosystems. Um, and we know that southeastern grasslands come in all shapes and sizes, ranging historically from a fraction of an acre to millions of acres. Next slide. And you can just keep advancing because there's a few little animations that come. Yeah, two more. There we go. So in my opinion, we can't really talk about the Southeast without acknowledging the very complicated and devastating waves of cultural and biodiversity losses that the land and people of the Southeast have endured throughout history. And as Native folks and bison were removed from the land, we see these grassland ecosystems begin to disappear and biodiversity of plants plummet. So Grassland loss in Native communities goes far beyond the loss of land and species. There are cultural and socioeconomic losses as well. Grassland loss means that medicine is lost, that stories are lost, that fire is lost, that culture is lost. Next slide. And while SGI had become very involved with many conservation projects and partners, like working in 16 projects in 16 states, getting huge opportunity with NPS to restore 39 national parks. All of this is great, but one thing that was really missing from this was tribal voices. So our leadership really started thinking about how we would centralize Native voices in the conservation and restoration of Southeast grasslands and what that might look like moving forward. And so we really wanted to make sure we step in through our program to fill this gap through Indigenous land management programs here at SGI and with the broader Intertribal Native Plant and Seed Working Group. Okay, next slide. And this makes sense, right? Our origin stories are here in the Southeast. Our medicines can be found here. Next slide. Our cultural keystone species like river cane can be found here. The dyes for our baskets are found here. Our sacred mounds are here. Next slide. And our ancestors are buried here. So it makes sense that our voices would need to be centralized in conservation conversations. Okay, next slide. And so people who work in these impaired ecosystems often feel ecological grief and burnout, but Indigenous people deal with the grief of losing our lifeways. It was illegal for us to do our ceremonies until the 70s. A lot of people don't know that. We're fighting to save our languages, our traditional foods, and our medicines are disappearing at alarming rates. People are still suffering from generational trauma of forced removal from these places. And the only way we can restore any of it is to restore all of it because it's all so interconnected and we can't really have one without the other. So when we work together to scout seeds, collect seeds, restore the land, we work to really restore the lifeways of the tribes of the Southeast. Okay, next. And just because we were torn away and removed from these homelands does not mean our commitment to land and stewardship was broken. So we have a lifelong commitment to the treatment and long-term sustainability of the southeastern ecosystems, privately owned or not. And so what should we do with this information? We need to do something, right? As we're conducting research, restoring, scouting seeds, collecting seeds, distributing these seeds, we want Indigenous folks front and center. And so these are some of the projects and ideas that we're working on building this. Next. We're working on the Return to Land project where we would work with tribes who have been removed from the Southeast and take a small cohort focusing on first language speakers, elders, and children on a week-long trip where we go on kind of a greatest hits grasslands tour where we collect seed with them. We go on a few of our restoration sites. And this week would include planning and carrying out a cultural burn. And then we would also pay all participants a stipend to participate. And SGI has just received a large grant that will be an Alabama seed collection project, where we'll be making hundreds of collections of native seed in Alabama, which includes SOS collections, SGI collections, and then an additional collection, which will go to support Indigenous seed banking efforts for culturally significant species, because we really want these seeds that we are taking to go back into tribal communities whose lands we're taking from. And then within this intertribal plant and seed working group, I lead two subcommittees. The first one is traditional, cultural, and medicinal plant group, where we're organizing and hopefully raising money to have our own apothecary so Indigenous folks can access their medicines or folks who want to source a certain part of the plant or the leaf. And then I'm leading the seeds collect, clean, and store subcommittee where we're working to start our own intertribal seed bank. So lots of exciting things happening in this realm. And I'll end with this. As Native people, we know that seed sourcing and sharing, knowing where our medicines are, how to preserve them is going to be of extreme high importance as we navigate together what this looks like for our future as Indigenous folks. So taking back autonomy of managing our own seeds, plants, and medicines. And you can go to the next slide. And Wado and Shki for listening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie. Our next speaker is Amelia Marchand.
Hello, why and chais squeeze gomkanaux. Inamwaswanix gomkanaux. Hello, my friends. Good day, everyone. My name is Amelia Marchand. I'm a citizen of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, and I'm the executive director of the Light Foundation. I'll be sharing a little about our organization and how we're supporting the Intertribal Native Plant and Seed Working Group. Next slide, please. So, a Light Foundation is an Indigenous native plant and pollinator conservation nonprofit based out of the Colville Indian Reservation in north central Washington state. We have several ongoing initiatives and activities that are all intertwined to support Indigenous food systems and water security, climate and community resilience, and really all of our spirit relatives. We have a lot of great things going on, like application opportunities through our We Swim Together scholarship program and the inaugural Pollinator Relatives Workshop, which is coming forward in June 2026. So I hope you each can take some time to check out our website, which is located at the bottom of the screen, thepnwlf.org. Our work to support the Intertribal Native Plant and Seed Working Group is primarily based within our Roots for the Future initiative. And this initiative has a focus to help educate and inform land managers, academic institutions, and others that native plants important to tribal nations and indigenous peoples, or TIP as we refer to, need culturally appropriate research support to identify climate vulnerability and adaptation potential. The Roots for the Future initiative was also created to help secure the culturally appropriate inclusion of native plant species into habitat restoration and reforestation projects. So, through this initiative, Light Foundation leads facilitation and convenings of two subcommittees of this working group. Next slide, please. The first subcommittee we started facilitating is called Tribal Greenhouse Programs. The priority of this subcommittee's planning team is to have representatives of tribal nations and Indigenous peoples, or TIP, throughout the US and Canada lead with their preferred plant relative goals and objectives, equitably leveraging diverse Indigenous knowledges and experiences. So, in this way, the Tribal Greenhouse Program Subcommittee will benefit from and really highlight national, regional, and local biodiversity priorities and needs of tribal nations and Indigenous peoples. So, really, we welcome and encourage additional support from academic, federal, state, and non-governmental organization partners. This subcommittee currently has 9 different individuals representing 8 different entities and accomplices. We've identified about 12 different goals and are still going through the process of further strategizing, defining, and streamlining them for our own organizing purposes. And additionally, we have about 4 actionable activities that we are considering undertaking. So, currently, the only meetings of the Tribal Greenhouse Programs Subcommittee are those of the planning team. And as we become more streamlined in our activities throughout 2026, we do envision that this may change. Next slide, please. So the second subcommittee we started facilitating is the Plant Relatives and Climate Impacts Subcommittee. And I like to call this committee Percy. So we held our first meeting in January 2026, and I'm happy to share that we're already starting to identify our goals and objectives and resources. In this committee, we have approximately 16 individuals from 11 different tribal nations and indigenous peoples, or TIP. Those are entities and accomplices, excuse me, that are engaging with this Percy committee. And I also briefly just want to note that Light Foundation hosts the Pacific Northwest Tribal Climate Change Project as part of our Indigenous Climate Futures Initiative. And we also help facilitate SULEEP, which is the Northeast Washington Indigenous Peoples Burning Network. And so that's another project that we also have within the Roots for the Future initiative. So as noted previously, all of our initiatives are really intertwined, they're interrelated, and really work in tandem for community relationships and resiliency. Next slide, please. So we've identified some ongoing next steps for these subcommittees. We'll continue to streamline and strategize our committee organization and structure, including identifying and applying free, prior, and informed consent processes and data sovereignty protocols. And in part, that's with the larger working group. We'll also work cooperatively with the planning teams of these committees to really articulate goals and actions that advance sovereignty, rights, and priorities of tribal nations and Indigenous peoples. And then last but not least, the majority, if not all, of our participants are volunteers, meaning they have taken on duties to participate in addition to or beyond the scope of their existing job descriptions. So this work, like, we acknowledge it as a gift and a responsibility by our dedicated volunteer planning teams. So for this reason, we're seeking funding and sponsorships to ensure our work continues and grows. Next slide, please. So I really, truly appreciate you each taking the time to listen to our presentations today, and I invite you all to support the Intertribal Native Plant and Seed Working Group and the sovereignty and rights of tribal nations and Indigenous peoples. Limlimt Katsiayao, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Since we didn't have time for questions, everyone feel free to reach out to Amelia at the information they've shared below, and then the whole Intertribal Working Group. All the folks would be more than happy to hear from you. So thank you so much, Amelia.
Thank you.